Got somebody else.
I had one with Professor Jennings in Galveston, and I think he brought his wife. And
Yeah.
she went shopping while we were hearing, and then he, when we were done, he just called her, and she came to pick him up, you know.
She's, oh, yeah. Well, that's good. Keeps you both active.
Yeah, no kidding.
Pays the bills sometimes.
Sometimes.
You don't have to chase down the chief to make sure that you get your check.
We'll get it taken care of, Mr. Arbitrator.
Yeah, we've not ever had that problem here.
You know where I have the problem on that, and it's kind of two-faced in a way? It's the veterans, the VA. I mean, that's like pulling teeth or something.
Oh, really?
They
have like a panels that hear cases over there? Or?
No, it's not that. It's just the procedure, the hierarchy, or whoever pays their bills over there is a real pain in the neck. And then the government really helps too. They have a new thing called SAMS, and that's where, as an arbitrator, you got to go give them all this information, and that quote makes you qualified then to get paid by the government, I guess, if you got an ask me type case or something like that. But, it's interesting, all the little things you go into. And speaking of interesting, are we ready to go?
Yes, sir.
We're ready to go.
Well, let's go.
Good? Okay. Tom, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chief. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Victor Rodriguez. I'm the chief at McAllen Police Department. I'm sorry.
How long have you held that title?
This is my 14th year.
Okay. And how many total years of law enforcement experience do you have?
I refuse to, no, I'm just kidding. It's
More or less.
quite a number of years. It's over 30 years.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We had heard earlier that McAllen is a civil service department.
Yes, sir. The city of McAllen is a civil service department and a collective bargaining city as well.
And you have been chief here, in not only the civil service department here, but elsewhere as well, right?
Yes, sir. I spent 16 years at the city of Brownsville I began my career there. I spent the last about 6.5 years, so that was 16, were as chief of Brownsville PD. And Brownsville is also a civil service city and also a collective bargaining city as well.
Okay, so you're familiar with the civil service disciplinary process and investigative process then?
I believe I am, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, let me draw your attention to the instrument that you authored here, which is, I'm calling it the charge letter involving Sergeant Lucas Torres, and that's going to be Exhibit 1A.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and just kind of as an overview briefly, what is this document? What does it do?
This is my order of suspension for Sergeant Lucas Torres for two incidents that gave rise to a series of violations of both civil service, local civil service department policies, also, and all of those basically authored in state 143 provisions as well. And the collective bargaining also has agreement in this particular city also provides us an opportunity to discipline according to this. So this is my note, and in all of that, I'm required to provide notice to the civil service director. That's why this is, or these letters are always addressed to the civil service director, giving them notice of that suspension with a copy to the officer that's affected by it.
Okay, and that's a requirement of the statute that you do that in this fashion, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Could you kind of walk us through the letter and to explain to the hearing examiner how it's assembled and what it is you're doing in each portion of the letter, please?
Yes, sir. I'm looking at my letter to Mr. Tom Longoria, Civil Service Director, dated September 10th. It is under tab 1A, and it's regarding Sergeant Lucas Torres, a disciplinary suspension of 5 working days. I inform him that in my first paragraph that I'm suspending him for the following reasons and the following acts. And number one is that on or about March 18th, Sergeant Torres engaged in some statements to Sergeant Javier Coronel about a rumored relationship involving two employees, specifically Officer Guillermina Cavazos and Lieutenant Zellers. And then a separate event that on or about May 27th, while off duty, Sergeant Torres contacted the McAllen Police Department Emergency Communications Bureau and instructed them to have a subordinate employee, specifically Officer Domingo Reyes, call him by phone. Once Officer Reyes contacted him by phone, Sergeant Torres inquired about a citation that Officer Reyes had issued to a citizen, specifically in this case, Erica Garcia, for a seatbelt violation. As a result of that conversation, Officer Reyes then changed the citation to a warning. His contact, that is Sergeant Torres' contact with the officer and the McAllen Emergency Communications Center, that's our dispatch center, and all of this activity was not based on any official purpose at all. Then the next part of the letter basically is the duties and responsibilities that the sergeant has as it relates to these particular matters. And obviously, there's a listing of all the duties he had. Do you want me to go by them or just pass?
Well, if you could, I don't want you to, obviously the hearing examiner can read the letter, but
Right.
does this basically outline the obligations at this rank of an officer at this rank?
Yes, generally a listing of all duties that may be breached because of his conduct.
Okay, okay.
The next area is basically a reference to our notice and subsequent pre-disciplinary meeting. We call that the Loudermill hearing. So that begins to be reflected upon in this letter at the bottom of page 2, which if you notice on August 25th, we provided him notice that we had a meeting for that due process hearing for September the 2nd.
Now, let me ask you something about that. You have the practice of using a notice of contemplated discipline
Yes, sir.
in that case?
We
Okay.
do typically, every now and then, an employee will say, I don't need a notice, just call me and I'll be there. But I'd say 75% of the time, it involves a letter saying, we're ready to meet with you, please come here. That's what we call a contemplated disciplinary hearing. In effect, is a notice, is I'm ready to meet with you on these matters. But there are occasions when an employee will tell us, don't send me a letter, just tell me to be here.
Okay. Now, strictly speaking, it's my understanding that Chapter 143 does not require that step, but is that something that's required by the labor agreement, or is that just a practice that you all have?
Just a practice.
Okay. And is the purpose of that practice to give the officer a final preview of where the allegations are, or where they have the officer had another opportunity to address the issues or bring additional information to your attention?
Yeah, it meets several objectives. One is to basically summarize generally what we think we're looking at in terms of the conduct and in terms of policies, what may be involved if that conduct is determined to be true, and also give them advance notice. In other words, we'll send that letter out several days in advance, sometimes more than that. And so we lay all that out well in advance with those letters of contemplated action for those hearings, what we call a Loudermill hearings.
Okay, and then each of these IA files has that type of notice?
If we issue a notice, it would be in the file. Like I said earlier, there are times in disciplinary situations where an employee will tell us, I don't need a written notice, just tell me to be here and I'll be there. So the answer is yes when we issue it, yes, sir.
He has to leave, there's an emergency at school. His child, just let him know. That's fine. Let him go? Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sir, let's continue going through your letter and how it's assembled and what it's doing.
So as we start with the introduction of the notice of a hearing, then we also now reflect on the actual hearing itself.
Okay.
And the date that it was held and who's present. In this case, for example, Sergeant Torres brought two lawyers with him, Mr. Al Alvarez and Mr. David Willis, to represent him in that particular hearing.
Okay. That's referenced at the bottom of page 2?
That's the bottom of page 2, second to last paragraph. You see there, his representatives were Mr. Alvarez and Mr. David Willis. Both are attorneys.
Okay. Let's go to page 3. What's the next portion of the letter?
The next is, again, I reflect on the fact that I iterate while we're there, And again, who else is present? In this case, we had Officer Juan Trevino, Officer Hernandez, and Lieutenant Foley present. They were present in the room at the time of this meeting. We also had Ms. Sandra Dearman, who made a record of the hearing, and basically that's a court reporter that we contract with, and they'll make a record of the hearing itself.
And that's the record that's at the end of this notebook?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Now, in this one, you outline some, you say here, at this meeting, Sergeant Torres acknowledged that. What is the nature of these?
Okay,
what are you doing here?
In this letter, I'm giving the Civil Service Director notice that obviously we've held a hearing, and that at that hearing, Sergeant Torres acknowledged that he made the statements to Sergeant Javier Coronado about a rumored relationship. That's never been, thus far, it's not been a question that he had that conversation with Sergeant Javier Coronado about Officer Guillermina Cavazos and Lieutenant Zellers. He also acknowledged the fact that he contacted the McAllen Police Department, that he requested Domingo Reyes to call him, and that he inquired about the citation for Erica Garcia. All that conduct is acknowledged by him, has been throughout this process. The conduct we alleged is acknowledged by him as having occurred. He admits to committing that conduct. He also said at the very end, and after a very trying hearing, he indicated to us he's learned from these incidents. The next piece is my affirmative statements about the allegations. I find it that he was on duty. Sergeant Torres did make those statements to Javier Coronado about a relationship or a rumored relationship between Officer Guillermina Cavazos and Lieutenant Zellers. And then, again, the facts about the May 27 incident, that while he was off duty, that he called the police department, that he instructed a subordinate employee, specifically Officer Reyes, to call him, that Officer Reyes called him by phone, and that that Sergeant Torres inquired about a citation to Ms. Erica Garcia. And that as a result of all of that, Officer Reyes changed the citation to a warning.
Okay, so, and these are all bullet points here. Are
Right.
these essentially findings that you're making off of the record?
These are findings that are made by me as a result of the investigation thus far. And then the next piece is the actual, again, affirmative statement of the breach of, in my view, what's been breached in terms of policies. And I list those again, the conduct, and there's a listing of those all the way to the bottom of page 4. So
Okay.
once I determine the conduct is true, then I make affirmative statements about what policies that conduct may breach.
Okay, and so walk us through those pertinent. So what you've done is you go through the rules and you determine what applies to the findings that you've made?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And it is my determination that conduct constitutes a neglect of duty, that it constitutes conduct prejudicial to good order, that it is a violation of police department policy, that it's failure to maintain a professional manner of conduct, that those acts reflect unfavorably or adversely, et cetera, on the department and the employee himself, that they intend to impair the operation and efficiency of the department, that some of that conduct discredits a supervisor, that it was his failure to be orderly, effective, and efficient, and failed to accord courtesy and respect to all personnel, that he failed to conduct himself in a manner that's orderly, effective, efficient, in a manner that affords respect and courtesy to subordinate personnel, that is, his conduct is failure to accord respect to a commander, superior, or supervisor at all times, that his acts tend to bring discredit to law enforcement in general, the McAllen Police Department in particular, and the officer himself, that it's that he became involved in a misdemeanor type situation while off duty.
and what was that, the ticket?
The ticket situation.
Okay.
That's a violation of policy. That he failed to or refrained from participating in or encouraging actions that would be perceived as harassment, and then he failed to abide by laws, rules, and regulations governing his conduct, and then such as the following, and I list the root of all those policies where they come from in the next three pages, which if you notice on page 5, then.
And those are like coming from chapter 143,
Yeah, the first piece is chapter 143,
the civil service rules. and
civil
regs.
service rules. McAllen.
The PD rules and regs.
Yes, sir.
And as I read through these, to some extent, there's some overlap from these various
Right.
bodies of rules.
Right.
Okay. Okay, take us through to page 8.
Then page 8, I begin to close this letter by saying that based upon the information that I have in front of me, I sustain the allegations, that I next considered what disciplinary action to take, and that as part of that review, I review his file. I did inform him that at that time that the matters would be sustained, that I further informed him that a suspension for a period in excess of 15 calendar days was under consideration, and that a suspension for a period in excess of 15 days constitutes an indefinite suspension at our department.
Is that just black letter civil service law these days?
Yes, sir, that is.
Okay.
However, Sergeant Torres admits learning from these incidents and understands that future conduct or similar nature may result in disciplinary action up to and including indefinite suspension. And therefore, I ordered that for the acts occurring on or about March the 8th of 2014, that he be suspended for 3 working days without pay effective September 11th and through September 13th. And for the acts occurring on May 27th, a 2-day suspension effective September 16th through September 17th.
Okay.
And then I provide the requisite notice of appeal in a letter.
The notice telling him that if he chooses to appeal, he can do so, and so on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I want you to kind of just go back now and explain to the hearing examiner, you know, your view of the conduct, the misconduct in the context of what we've been calling a rumors case, okay? I mean, what is it about that situation that you believed or you concluded, number one, constituted misconduct, and why that was the case, and how you fit it into your overall supervision of your police officers under your charge? Let's take them one at a time, okay?
Right.
Let's go with the first one.
We have an employee at the department that, for a variation of reasons we've heard here today, you're doing it because somebody's looking into your sick leave or whatever, for whatever those reasons may be. Regardless of that, we have an employee that's complaining about something that's going on in her employment world, and that's a serious matter. And that matter has caused us a lot of work. I think you've heard today that we've had 5 or 6 different investigations, all in different silos in order to isolate everyone, just to make sure that we run every lead down. We're still here today, and may be here for another 30 days or however long it takes to get this finalized. All because an employee is bothered as such, and we've determined that the conduct that is the root of that complaint was comments that Sergeant Lucas Torres made to her boyfriend at the department. It isn't comments that he made to citizen Joe walking down the street. It isn't comments made to somebody completely unrelated. There were comments made to the gentleman that's going to her house that night, you know, and that is what I think is very bad conduct. There was no reason for that type of conduct.
During the course of the due process hearing, did Sergeant Torres contend that all he was doing was bringing to light, you know, conduct by another officer, in this case Lieutenant Tellers, that needed to be brought out?
He wants to say that. He wants to say, you know, I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to do this stuff. I mean, Sergeant Torres is a seasoned officer in our department. Writing complaints is not foreign to him. He knows how to write complaints, investigate complaints. He knows how to do all that. To try to say that I'm just trying to, you know, correct the wrong is relying falsely, I believe, on an excuse for now having to respond to an allegation of misconduct, one that caused an employee in our department a lot of heartache, and for us, a lot of work. We've been at this for close to a year. And here we are. Now, I'm
Now,
sorry.
consider, if you would, though, and I want you to address it from this angle for the benefit of the hearing examiner. So what if he did, in fact, have knowledge of misconduct by a lieutenant and had personal knowledge of that conduct? Would he have a duty in that respect?
He has a duty. He has a duty to report that conduct. We, especially in the area of harassment, it's information we pass on to them on a constant basis about their duties and responsibilities. They have a duty to make sure, if it comes to their attention, that they make every effort to make sure it doesn't continue and to report it. So none of that happened in this particular case. But, he wants to say, I was trying to tell him that this is bad conduct on somebody else, so be on the lookout for this. And that's a false crutch, in my view. And it's cost an employee a lot of heartache, and it cost us a lot of work.
What about in the, and let me shift the focus over to the other case, the ticket case. Is it, in that, as part of that case, did you determine that he had, in fact, instructed this other officer to change the ticket, or how did you view that case?
If we look at his memo, at the officer's memo when he's reporting this situation, in the ticket fixing case, he says, I was asked to change it. As we wanted to, I think that's, and let me just go back a second on the previous case. I suspended him for 3 days on this case.
Okay.
And I wanted to suspend him more. I didn't want to create a legal issue with regard to, on the date that I took this action, I was on my 177th day. So that's why I bifurcated the actions. And I say, for the first piece, you're serving a 3-day sentence between now and the 180th day. So now I know that the requisite for us is simply to give him notice, and that notice cannot contain information that's older than 180 days. I believe that we can serve a suspension outside the 180 days so long as we provide the notice. But I didn't want to create another point of litigation. So in my best analysis, I kept it to 3 days to keep it all contained without any more legal litigation issues on the 180 rule. Now, on the ticket fixing thing, if you look at the officer's memo, it's in the file, the officer says, I was asked to change. The captain says, he told me he was asked to change. But as we move forward, I said, we're going to ask you this on point. I said, well, asked is a matter of how it got to me. And so we give him the benefit. I'm not charging him with asking or ordering an officer to change a ticket. If I could charge it and sustain it, I'd fire him. He wouldn't be here right now. Well, we might be here, but not for a 2-day suspension. We'd be here for firing. But the officer at the very end, when says, tell me exactly what, I said, well, he asked me indirectly, this is what he wants me to do. So based upon what I can prove is here, it says, he got himself involved in a matter while off duty. It was a misdemeanor, which is a policy violation. He had no business contacting our communications center and requiring an officer to, as if he's on duty, ordering our communications people to have somebody call him, and then asking an officer about a on-duty matter which just occurred. He's off duty. He's disconnected. No one has those special privileges. And the result of that conversation, a ticket was changed from a citation to a warning. So I'm charging him with the conduct that leads to that. If I could prove, I don't know, the officer would live up to the fact that he said, I was told to change it, this would have been a firing as well.
Okay, so based on your assessment of the officer's own testimony as part of the investigation, it sounds like you were not completely comfortable with the notion that he had been ordered to change that ticket by Sergeant Torres.
I try to charge what I can prove, and if you look at my letter of charges, I don't believe there's anything I've written here that I can't point to and prove up. And that's just the way I operate. I don't try to charge something. I don't try to reach for straws. I try to charge what I can prove.
Okay, and so you're basically saying, I'm not trying to prove that he ordered him to change the ticket.
I didn't charge it. I'm not saying I don't believe he didn't do it. I didn't charge it. If you look at the officer's memo on this point, the officer Reyes' memo on this point, he says, I was asked to change this ticket.
Okay?
You know, when we started doing the formal investigation on this, and we said, well, what, once we get into, let's say this, what are you going to say? He said, well, it's different words, different ways, but, so he was waffling on us, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. But and did Sergeant Torres deny that he asked him to do it?
And Sergeant Torres denies, I didn't ask him to change it. Everything else is true, but I didn't ask him to change it.
Okay. So there's still an aspect.
Or ordered him to change it, by the way.
So there's still an aspect of it, though, that you found improper.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about this discussion that we had earlier with your detective, IA investigator, about whether the officer Reyes committed a policy violation? How do you view that?
I understand the job that Mr.
Willis
Willis has to do. I don't appreciate that at the expense of perhaps members of his, or in at least members of our department. But if you look at, for example, at at the end of the day, by the way, at the end of the day, the police chief ultimately can, these are policies I write. And so ultimately I can say, you know what, I'm going to skip 2, go do this. So, and that's stuff that's my privilege as a chief, to be able to at any given time direct something different if I choose to do so. But if you look at the ticket writing policy he was referring to and trying to allude to, there was a discovery, right?
Policies 20A?
Yes, sir. If you look at section, that is exhibit, their exhibit is, I think it's number 4.
4, yes.
It's section 20, the policy, and they were pointing out towards, second page on that, section F. And I think he was trying to say that one sign, or that citation cannot be changed from a ticket warning to, or vice versa after signature. And that is a policy. You can't, and theoretically, the way the ticket writing system works, that applies once the data is deposited into the municipal court record. That's why it says without the judge's approval. Okay, so there are 2 areas that are in the middle, that are neutral in terms of why we chose not to take, let's say, action against the officer. One is that data has not reached the court, so it's not in the court's hands, number 1. And number 2, he was telling us a sergeant asked me to do this. So he was covered from the standpoint of that. So I didn't charge the sergeant with violating this policy because, again, then I go back to ordering the change of the ticket. I didn't want to go there. I try to charge what I could prove.
Okay. What about the other, and when we were talking about policy, what about this question about that you're in the investigation of the misconduct, that the policy has a reference, and this is the policy 64, grievance 3, that the investigating personnel do a disposition recommendation. Could you address that question?
I order them not to give me a recommendation.
Okay.
I don't want recommendations on these investigations until I have had a chance to. I'm the trier, if you will, the trier of facts at that level, at that point in time, and I want to be completely neutral of any information. So,
do you know if that was a practice at some time before your tenure here?
I think they might have had a practice prior to my time to submitting these. My choice is not to, although this is my policy. I'm instructing them I don't want those until I have had a chance to have my louder mill hearings. So I want to be going in there completely free of any type of recommendations, and that's just the way I operate. When I go to a hearing, no one knows what the outcome of that hearing is going to be. The OPR investigators have no clue what I'm going to decide, and I don't want, and that's just the way it is. I go in there completely open to listen to what's going to be said and put up, and then I make a decision. So the other thing I want to say before I get off on the ticket, just for purposes, and again, the aggravating piece of this is that there too involves not only do we do all this with a ticket, but it involves Ms. Garcia. Ms. Garcia happens to be the wife of a subordinate employee. In other words, she is the ex-wife. She's not only an ex-employee, but also an ex-wife. And that's why these things come together as conduct by somebody involving himself in matters of other employees. So, so when I get to these decisions, that's why I took those decisions.
So in this case, do you feel that the discipline of 3 days on the rumors case is fair and reasonable?
It was very painful to get to this decision. But I weighed all the things that are necessary to weigh in making a decision, and it's painful for this reason. If you look at, for example, at the actual hearing record, in his mind, none of what's happened is wrong, and I'm highly troubled by that. Highly troubled by that. If these infractions were of more serious nature, we wouldn't be here. But I have to be fair. I have to be judicious in what I'm looking at. As I'm looking at somebody doing this, somebody doing this. If you take all things out, that's all they are. It is aggravating that he's a supervisor. And if you look at the hearing record, which is the last two, the court reporter's record of our hearing, Sergeant Lucas Torres holds to the idea that nothing he's done is wrong. And I'm very troubled by that. But I've got to await the decision of the arbitrator in order to finalize this. If there is wrong, I've got to send him a retraining or otherwise. If I'm wrong, then he'll tell me, no, you were wrong, and then we're fine. But if I have an agreeing opinion, then I've got a problem, because this conduct is wrong. And that's why it's so troubling for me getting to this. But at the end of the day, I had to isolate myself and isolate the situation to just what it is, without nothing else getting it poisoned. And I thought that the 2-day on getting involved was adequate, at least for now. And the 3-day, I had no choice. I was up on 180th day by that time.
Okay. So are you asking the hearing examiner to affirm your decision in this case then?
Yes, sir, I am. I don't know how to more fairly and state the case that's in front of you. I'm sorry that you're here listening to this stuff, but it is part of work that we have to do. So I ask that you affirm the action we've taken in this case.
I'll pass the witness.
Okay. Chief, you just testified that you have the ability and authority to modify terms of the McAllen Police Department rules, regulations, and policy manual. Is that correct?
That I have the ability and authority
Yes.
to modify terms?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And in the case of Domingo Reyes and whether or not he violated policy within your authority, you've exempted him from that provision. Is that correct?
No, sir. The judgment was different, and that's what I was trying to say, at least in my statement to you earlier. Your black and white reading of this is different from our application. And again, I've explained to you why there are two other pieces of information that you don't want to recognize. And number one is the fact that this is not within the judge's realm of authority yet. So that section is not applicable as of yet, number one. And number two, the fact that he was ordered by a supervisor cleanses him somewhat of that responsibility. So there isn't, and again, that's just an analysis on my part and a judgment on my part that that was not violated.
What constitutes an official citation?
An official citation?
Yes.
Yes, sir. An official, the one Miss Erica drove away with, that's an official citation.
Once the citation is signed, it becomes an official citation, does it not?
Once she drives away with that citation, that's, in this case, the one Miss Erica Garcia drove away from the officer. Once she left with that citation in hand, that's an issued citation.
That's an official citation pursuant to the term of section 20, little a, Roman numeral 4, subsection capital F, right? That's defined in the middle sentence there of that little paragraph, right?
I'm sorry, you're asking me to what now?
Sure. Section 20, little a, Roman numeral 4, subsection capital F defines what an official citation is, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's once it's signed.
Well, there's no such thing as official citation there.
Well, what does it say here? Once signed, the citation becomes an official citation unless the appropriate request to change it is submitted through an IDC.
And again, the official request for a change is a subordinate to a sergeant to a lieutenant for change. And in this case, we have a sergeant ordering that change.
Is what you just described found anywhere in this policy?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. Where is it that where in this policy is this sentence, once signed, the citation becomes an official citation, modified? Where is that modified in this policy?
If you look at that, it must be submitted through an IDC. Okay, that means a chain of command request. And what we mitigated against that is the fact that we have a sergeant in this case ordering a subordinate employee to change a ticket.
Is that exemption, or is that qualification of the term found anywhere in the four corners of this document?
No, sir, but it is the kind of analysis process that I must go through to determine whether or not we have an actual letter violation.
And I asked Detective Hernandez, while he was on the stand, whether or not he had a non-delegable duty to report misconduct. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And he said, no, it's not discretionary, I have to report it, right?
That's correct.
And I asked him if he reported the possible discovery of Domingo Reyes's violation of Section 20A. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And he said, no, he did not.
And I differ with that.
Well, but he said he didn't.
I know what you said, but I know what the question as well. Yeah, you have to understand, he works for me. Him making that discovery and bringing that to my attention, in effect, is reporting that incident. But I'm not going to tangle with you about, did he write a letter to me and send it to the post office and tell me that's what it is? It's not information that any one of us involved in this process were left out in the dark with, So it is a discussion. It is important information that we brought. When we look at these things, do we have this, do we have that? This is, in this case, that discussion happens. And then I make a decision, is it a viable violation? We don't go around headhunting, Is it a viable violation? And if we're going to allege it, can we sustain it? It was my determination that it wasn't.
And there was a requirement that he do submit it to you in writing.
Well, and again, he said, you asked him if he reported it, he said no.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I differ with that interpretation of that because he did bring it to my attention.
Okay. In either way, whether he did or did not, you have the ability to exempt him from the manual. Is that right?
To exempt him from the manual?
Sure. If the policy manual says he has to do something when he sees a violation, you as chief then can say, as the ruler of all of these things, and I can determine whether or not a policy violation occurs, I exempt you from that.
And again, I guess the answer to that is, can I tell somebody not to comply with that? Certainly, you can't never say no to that, but.
Is that your answer? Can you?
I'm telling you that as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I heard his testimony. I differ. I know why he answered it, how he answered it, because you asked him if he submitted a report on it. And again, I'm just telling you, I think he answered truthfully. He didn't write a memo and a letter and put it in the mail to me and all that. That is true. But he did address it to me.
Do you have the ability, as chief of the police of the McAllen Police Department, to say that certain officers are exempt from your policy manual in certain circumstances?
Yes.
And is this the first case that you've ever done this before?
I'm sorry that I've
Is
exempted.
this the first time that you've ever exempted somebody from reporting misconduct?
From reporting.
Pursuant to the terms of your Section 64?
From reporting a change of a ticket?
Well, yeah.
I don't know of any other circumstance where somebody's brought a ticket change to my attention. All other ticket changes, and again, I differ with you in the sense that you keep saying he didn't bring that to my attention. He did. It's part of the process of investigation. They work directly for my office.
Was he telling something falsely on the stand here today?
No, sir. I think he was truthful.
You also said that the reason why a investigation was not initiated against Domingo Reyes was because that, in your opinion, there was a order from a superior. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that order, that alleged order from his superior, Sergeant Torres, was improper, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, he wasn't on duty, was he?
Who's that?
Sergeant Torres.
No, he wasn't.
Okay. So there wasn't a valid order, was it? By definition, it couldn't have been a valid order.
It's valid from a subordinate from a superior to subordinate standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it a lawful? That's different.
All right, let's say, was it a lawful one?
No, sir, it wasn't.
All right. So, does a patrol officer have to abide by an unlawful order from his superior?
No, sir.
What is his duty when he receives an unlawful order?
Depending on the order, he has a duty to first be subordinate. And unless that order is going to cause some irreversible harm, he pretty much has to follow that order.
Even an unlawful order?
He's got remedies, but he's got to be subordinate first.
Lieutenant Zellers was eventually disciplined as a result of, at least in part, of the investigation that started with the accusation against Lucas Torres. Is that right?
No, sir.
All right. Was he ever disciplined in the relative time period, in May,
Relative to
into the instigation of this proceeding against Lucas Torres?
Lieutenant Zellers has been disciplined, irrelevant to this matter.
So when Detective Joe Hernandez was on the stand and testified that the contents of this audio recording have testimony that in part relate to the investigation against Lucas Torres, but also in part to other independent investigations.
Mr., what's your name again? Willis?
David Willis.
Willis. Mr. Willis. I don't know how, and I know it's been a long day and confusing, but let me try to be real clear with this, as clear as I can put it. We have a complaint by Ms. Guillermina Cavazos.
Yes.
That alleges certain conduct.
Okay.
Okay? In her mind, the first focus of her complaint is, Lieutenant Zellers is saying something about me.
Okay.
So we initiated the investigation. And at each communication point, we find, okay, who was the first one? Is it Sergeant Cavazos? I forget the name of the sergeant.
Coronado?
Coronado told me this, so we investigate him. He says, Sergeant Lucas Torres told me this.
Okay.
So we investigate him.
All right.
Sergeant Lucas Torres says, Michael Zellers told me this.
All right.
So that's the process we follow. And each one that got isolated that way, we investigated. So what you have is an interview about information that relates to all of those things as it relates to this body of investigation, not the other matter which was investigated and disciplined for. That matter is separate from this.
The allegation that we call the rumors case was whether or not Lucas Torres told Javier Coronado that Michael Zellers said that he was in a previous relationship with Guillermina Cavazos, right?
That is the part of the allegation is that Sergeant Coronado went home and told some things to Officer Cavazos
Yes,
that he heard from Lucas Torres.
yes,
Okay? Lucas Torres is heard it from Mike Zellers.
right?
And we've determined unable to substantiate anything that Zellers ever said to Lucas Torres. We've determined, Zellers says there's never been a relationship between myself and Ms. Cavazos. Ms. Cavazos says, I've never been in a relationship with him of any kind, anytime, anywhere, of any kind. So we have Lucas Torres being the only person saying anything here, and he admits to being the person that says, I said this to Sergeant Coronado, and that spurned this particular set of complaints. And the only evidence, the only case that we were able to prove up in all of this right here is the fact that he said it.
What is the proof that you relied on to say that there was nothing to substantiate the allegation that Lieutenant Zellers was saying that he was in a previous relationship with Guillermina Cavazos?
Again, I'll tell you this. He says it never happened. She says it never happened.
Okay.
The
Now-
two principles in that perceived relationship, the two principles
Right. Now, let me ask you this.
say that never happened.
Isn't it true that Guillermina Cavazos said on two separate occasions that Lieutenant Zellers had told Sergeant David Cavazos that he had said such a thing?
And again, we were not able to substantiate, that didn't go anywhere. The sergeant doesn't say that.
What proved that? What proved that it didn't go anywhere? What proved that it didn't go anywhere? Right now, you have two allegations contained in two different IDCs that say one thing. What disproved it?
Mr. Willis,
Yes?
okay. I'm not going to go with you like this all day long. You know, all I'm telling you is we followed every piece of this information, and the only provable piece of this was the fact that Lucas Torres, he can say all he wants to. If I'm going to act on it, I could not substantiate it. He wants to point it to everybody. I don't have the evidence there. Okay, not only do I not have the evidence because Lieutenant Zellers declines or denies that he's ever been there, the other principal in that perceived relationship also says, we've never had anything. Okay,
But that's not the allegation of the rumors, is it?
No, the rumor here is what he said to Sergeant Coronado, and that getting to Ms. Cavazos, his significant partner for the time, at that time, I'm not certain what the relationship exactly is. And that spurned this complaint.
Is there one explicit denial by Lieutenant Michael Zellers contained in your file of the allegation that I did not tell David Coronado?
Yes.
There's an explicit
Yes, sir.
denial? Where
Yes,
is
sir.
it?
If you look at his memo, I think it's in there.
His IDC?
Yes, sir.
All right. What does he say, actually?
I think you read it while Captain Torres here, Captain Alcocer was here. He
Okay,
said,
and what did Captain Alcorcer ask him?
okay, was he, any rumors? He said, no rumors to anybody, anytime.
He never even brought up the fact about David Coronado, did he?
Mr. Willis, I'm not going to sit here and let you characterize it that way. I think the captain said, and this is typical for us, this is the complaint right here. This is a pager, one pager, whatever it is, Miss so-and-so. Employees sit there, read it, and answer it. And I think that's what he said happened.
Let's say that did happen. You're the chief of
No,
police.
I'm not going to sit here and let's say. I'm just asking the questions.
All right, fine. If the testimony is that Alcocer handed Lieutenant Zellers the two IDCs, the one on March the 18th and the March the 21st, and says, respond to this. If that happened, is Lieutenant Zellers' response sufficient, in your opinion?
Adequate, yes, sir.
And where did he actually address the allegations that Guillermina Cavazos felt that she was uncomfortable around him, that he texted her inappropriately, that she thought that he said that he had more power than he did and more knowledge, that he controlled whether or not she was accepted into the academy? Where are those
We're moving beyond cross into argument. I think this is a closing argument, and I think it's improper cross-examination. I'm happy to have him do closing in the brief or however, but That's not cross-examination anymore. That's
Isn't
my
it
objection.
true that,
Well, wait a minute.
I'll abide by the objection.
Okay, good.
Isn't it true that Lieutenant Michael Zellers did not directly refute any of the specific allegations contained in Guillermina Cavazos' IDCs dated March 18th and March 21 that related to her claim that she felt uncomfortable around him?
Mr. Willis, it is not true. And were it true, we'd have a separate discipline case.
Where is it found in that ID? Where is it found in Lieutenant Zeller's
And again,
response?
I've addressed to you the fact that we had a host of investigations that were triggered by one complaint. Each one of those has been independently investigated. They're G files right now because we were not able to sustain any misconduct in those, all the other investigations we did. And they stand on their own. Right here, we're with Lucas Torres. The one in a here, at a hearing here, is not any one of the other employees that were investigated. The one that's being investigated here is, the one that's been addressed here today, and appealing a three-day suspension on this piece of it is Sergeant Lucas Torres.
Did you ever speak to Guillermina Cavazos about this case?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever ask her if she has any resentment, anger, or animosity against Lucas Torres?
No, sir.
That wasn't a relevant question.
No, sir.
Pass the witness.
Okay,
No further questions.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
We rest.
You rest.
We rest.
I'll ask that appellant exhibits 1 through 4 be admitted into evidence, in addition to the audio recording as they stipulated.
Get to,
Sure. I requested that appellant's exhibits 1 through 4 be admitted into evidence.
I think I had already said I
Okay,
didn't
just
have
in
a
case, I wanna make
problem
sure
with
it's
them.
clear.
That these are grievance 1 through 4s. Fine.
Okay. I'm prepared to call a witness.
okay?
Guillermina Cavazos.
Mira, Cavazos.
Oh, okay. I'll let them know from them. Hold on 1 second. Just hold on a second. I was notified that one of the witnesses I had subpoenaed, Moises Garcia, had an emergency at some location, and I excused him due to the emergency. Just want to let everybody know that that's what ended up happening. I don't, at this point, think that I'll be calling him at a later date, but apparently he had an emergency with a family relationship that I excused him.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I believe we swore you in this morning,
Good, sir.
put you under oath, okay? Just to remind you, you're still under that oath,
Yes.
okay?
Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Guillermina Cavazos.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer.
How long you been a police officer?
About 3 years.
What department are you with?
McAllen PD.
All right. Do you know why you're here?
Yes, sir.
Why are you here?
I've been subpoenaed in regards to Sergeant Lucas Torres's case, in regards to my complaint.
Okay, and what complaint specifically are you referring to?
To the one from March the 18th
All right,
of 2014,
all right, and you filed a complaint against who?
against Lieutenant Zellers.
All right, and what was the nature of your complaint?
Basically sexual harassment,
All
because
right.
of some rumors.
When you filed that complaint, who did you file that complaint with?
I filed it with my sergeant, Elizabeth Trevino.
Okay, and is she in your chain of command?
Yes.
All right. Did Sergeant Elizabeth Trevino tell you what to write in that complaint?
No, she assisted me into what to write.
All right. If the testimony established here today is that you told Captain Alcocer that the IDC dated March 18, 2014 were not your words, what is your reaction to that testimony?
To my reaction is I basically said that it wasn't my specific words to it, but I was there, so I understood the whole meaning of the IDC, of the purpose.
Would you describe to the hearing examiner the process of how you physically typed the IDC and how Sergeant Trevino was involved?
Because I was very distraught at the time. I was typing it at first, but I couldn't put my words together.
Okay.
I was putting more of my anger
Okay.
into the IDC than more of a calm way, putting the correct words to it.
Okay.
So, of course, she was there. She assisted me with wordings, how, she said, you know what, I'll go ahead and type it, but you tell me how you want it.
Okay.
So that's basically it. I mean, I was trembling that day, basically.
Do you feel that she was putting words in your mouth?
No.
Now, after you turned in that IDC to Sergeant Trevino, that went up the chain of command, is that correct?
Yes,
It went to your Lieutenant Garcia, is that right?
that's correct.
And then eventually to Captain Alcocer.
Yes.
Would you describe for the hearing examiner the circumstances of your meeting with Captain Alcocer?
Presented him the IDC, he read it, and then he had questions on every paragraph that I had placed on it. Basically, it wasn't to the appropriate wordings,
Okay.
kind of like making it seem like it was probably Sergeant Trevino's wordings. So, of course, I know, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a record here, but yes, she did assisted me. That's what I did to tell him. And after reading everything, I was told to redo another IDC with my own wording, and if I had any questions, to go to either Lieutenant Garcia or to him.
All right. Now, did you ever have a conversation at that meeting with Captain Alcocer about Lieutenant Zeller's authority and position within the department?
Yes, I did.
What did he tell you?
Don't recall the exact wording, but it's more of his ranking. I had to be considerate about his position
Okay.
from the police department. So,
All right.
yeah.
Did you feel as if you were being counseled into filling out a proper IDC form alleging sexual harassment?
It seemed more that what I had written in the first IDC, it was not a sexual harassment. So I had to, reword it in a more appropriate way to not make it sound too sexual harassment.
One of the allegations in your March 18, 2014 IDC was that you believe that Lieutenant Michael Zellers was looking into your sick leave usage inappropriately. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Captain Alcocer then reminded you of his position and his, authority. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you get the impression that he was defending Lieutenant Michael Zellers?
I felt at that moment that because of the fact that I heard him mention Mike, I felt like, okay, are we talking about friends or are we talking about position-wise?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a possibility, yes, that it seemed that way.
At the close of your meeting with Captain Alcocer, let me back up. There was another man in that meeting with you, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sergeant Elizabeth Trevino wasn't allowed in that meeting, was she?
No.
Okay. So it was just you and Lieutenant Garcia and Captain Alcocer, is that right?
Yes,
And then you were ordered to resubmit your IDC, is that right?
that's correct.
And then you did that on March the 21st, 2014?
Yes.
Did you change a lot of the substance of your IDC?
Not much. It was mostly the wordings to it that I changed, that I can recall right now. It's been almost a year, and
Sure.
I don't have the IDCs with me. It's mostly the wording.
All
You know,
right.
though, I guess you could say I just calmed it down a little bit.
All right. Were you ever notified whatever became of that initial IDC?
No.
Did you find the process of reporting that allegation of harassment to be an emotional time for you?
Yes, it was.
Did you find that the process wherein you were supposed to report that harassment, did you find that to be open and objective?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Were you angered by the process?
I was a little upset. I was a little disappointed, yes. I was.
Okay. Now, maybe a month later, you were asked to attend an interview with Detective Joe Hernandez, is that right?
That's right.
All right. And would that be at the end of April?
I don't recall. Honestly, I don't.
Do you remember how long that meeting lasted?
I'm going to say maybe about, I know we cut for lunch, maybe about 3 hours, 4 hours total, more or less,
It was 3 or 4 hours.
more or less, yeah.
All right. And during the 3 or 4 hours, did he go through each of the allegations contained in your 2 IDCs?
Yes,
At any time during your interview with Detective Hernandez, did Detective Hernandez try to disprove your allegations?
yes,
At any time during your interview with Detective Hernandez, did he ever raise his voice during your interview?
yes,
At any time during your interview with Detective Hernandez, did he ever make any accusations regarding your motive into filing these IDCs?
yes.
What did he say?
I don't recall the exact words.
What was the
more-
impression you had?
If I was retaliating because because Lieutenant Zenas was looking into my sick leave, so was I turning it around? You know, basically, okay, well, you're gonna go through this, so I'm gonna get you through this, and that was not the case.
Before you entered that interview with Detective Hernandez, did you feel that you had been sexually harassed by Lieutenant Mike Zellers?
Yes, I did.
After you left that interview with Detective Hernandez, did you feel that you had been sexually harassed by Lieutenant Michael Zellers?
No.
What changed your mind?
That was, honestly, by the way it was brought to me, I was disapproving my thought. I thought it was more of a, maybe I'm doubting myself, maybe I'm in the wrong here, because somebody tells you you're pretty, you're beautiful more than once or twice, it's not considered sexual harassment. So that's what kept on going through my mind, well, maybe they're right.
Eventually, maybe even a few days later, this was in May, you met with Detective Hernandez again, correct?
Correct.
What was the purpose of that second meeting?
For me to sign the affidavit.
All right. And when you went to sign that affidavit, did you and him, did you dictate the contents of your affidavit to him while he typed?
No, not the first one.
What happened? Would you describe that for the hearing examiner, how the first affidavit came into being?
The first affidavit, when I met up with Detective Hernandez, I sat down and he had everything, he had the affidavit ready for me to sign. He did tell me, review it and then just sign it. If everything is to your approval, sign it. So I read it and I found some wrong wordings to it, no, this is not how it happened, or this is this. And so I had to make little corrections on it. And that's when he retyped everything again. But of course, I didn't see, but he typed everything again, and then he printed it out, and that's when I signed the second affidavit.
Did you read it before you signed it?
I
last
read,
time?
yeah, I basically went back to the corrections that should have been corrected.
Okay. Now, in your IDC, and I'll tell you, well, let me just tell you. In your affidavit that you signed on May the 1st, it says that after reviewing both the interdepartmental communication memos, I have realized that I was incorrect to make such an accusation against Michael Zellers. You signed that. Is that true?
If I did sign it, yes. I mean, honestly, I don't recall, and I don't have a copy. I never received a copy of my affidavit.
Do you think now that you were wrong to make such an accusation against Lieutenant Michael Zellers?
Honestly, after reviewing or after seeing the mandatory sexual harassment video that the city of McAllen, provided, I got to realize that I was actually incorrect. From the things that were said about me was enough for me to say that it was a sexual harassment.
Also in your affidavit, it says that he has never done anything in the past that would indicate that he had a sexual-oriented interest in me. You signed off on that in that affidavit. Is that true?
Now, I mean, like I said, after reviewing that video, at that moment, yes, I doubted myself, or maybe from what he was doing is not enough to give the sign of let's have sex. But after watching the video, it did open up my eyes.
Was it a difficult decision for you to file the IDC on March 18th, 2014?
At that moment, no.
Okay.
Because I was upset. I was very angry.
Okay. Was it difficult for you to file the second IDC on March 21st, 2014?
That one was a little bit more, yes.
And why is that? What was it?
Because I kind of started thinking, am I in the wrong place to be doing this? Maybe this isn't a sexual harassment. That's when I had my doubts. I kept on doubting everything.
Was it hard for you to submit yourself to a 3 or 4 hour interview with Detective Joe Hernandez regarding your allegations of sexual harassment?
Because of the demeanor, yes. It was a little intense.
And was it difficult for you to sign this affidavit dated May the 1st, 2014 regarding this sexual harassment?
It was a little uncomfortable, yeah.
Is it fair to say that you've been put through a whole lot through this whole process?
For almost a year, yeah, it's not comfortable because as soon as I walk into the police department, I feel that the people that heard the rumors probably see that in me, and that's not what I want.
Do you understand that the first source of these rumors, as alleged in this proceeding here, is Lucas Torres?
No.
That he told Javier Coronado that Lieutenant Zellers had told him that you guys were in a previous relationship and that you had dumped him. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand, but no, he's not the first. Where the whole problem came about, no, because the problem had already arisen way before.
Who is that through?
Sergeant Cavazos, Sergeant David Cavazos,
David
was the
Cavazos.
initial person that came to me to tell me about it, about Lieutenant Zellers. And that was before I went into the police academy. And then the second time, he still came from Sergeant Cavazos, was when I went on my own, and I landed on Lieutenant Zellers' patrol ship.
Do you have any anger or resentment toward Lucas Torres for what he told Javier Coronado?
No, I don't.
Do you think that Lucas Torres should be suspended at all because what he told Javier Coronado?
Objection, that's really not an appropriate question for the witness. I mean, she doesn't have the full investigative file.
No, but he asked her, how does she feel about it, so I'm going to let her answer.
Okay.
No, I don't agree, but I don't agree. I'm sorry.
So earlier, just a few minutes ago, you said that Lucas told us was not the first time that these rumors came about. It actually was David Cavazos, is that right?
That's correct.
So if David Cavazos states that he never spoke to you about Lieutenant Zellers, would that be true?
That's not true.
Let me refer you to that blue binder right there. Tab 3, page 33.
That's from David.
Would you take a moment to read that document?
Which one are we looking at, sir?
Page 33.
Okay. Tab 3 of the rumors case, right? Okay, 5.
Yeah, that would be tab 3 under 2A. And it's page 33 for the...
No, 33.
33.
What is this? Is this the affidavit?
No, actually, that's...
Okay, well, then
Here we go.
you lost me by a page. Okay, thanks.
This is the IDC from David Cavazos to the chief in response to Hernandez's order.
What does it look like? What does page 33 look like to you?
That is false. That's not true.
Is this an IDC from David Cavazos to the chief regarding his conversation with you?
Correct.
Okay. And therein he says what? That he never...
That he never spoke to me anything about, Lieutenant Zellers. There was nothing about it.
Okay. Is that false?
Yes, it is false.
I'll pass the witness.
Hi, officer.
No, sir.
Rick Navarro, we've met once before, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me kind of go back over, sort of go to the beginning of this. It was my understanding, you recall that I spoke with you at some point when this case was getting ready and told you that I would be representing the chief in this case. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay, and you recall, I mean, you're a witness in this case. You're not a party. You're just here to tell us what you know and to testify truthfully in the case. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it was my understanding here that if you turn to page 22 in that notebook there, I think at tab 3. Most of what we're going to talk about is at that tab 3. There's some pages, small page numbers at the bottom right-hand corner.
Okay. 22?
Yeah, 22.
Okay.
It's my understanding that this is your IDC, the first IDC that you submitted. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's my understanding that that what led to you, to this IDC being created and submitted by you, began with some verbal communications that were brought to your attention by Javier Coronado.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And Javier Coronado is a sergeant?
yes, sir.
Okay. And he, and you and he have a personal as well as a professional relationship.
Correct,
In other words, you're both law enforcement officers for the city, but you also have a personal relationship.
that's correct.
Okay. And I believe at the time of this was transpiring that you all were residing together. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it was my understanding that the starting point from your perspective about this was when he came home and told you, hey, I'm hearing about these rumors about that you had a prior relationship with Lieutenant Zellers. Is that correct? That was my understanding
Yes.
from our prior interview.
Yes, more or less, yes, that's
I
what
mean,
the conversation was about.
Yeah, I'm kind of summarizing, but that's
Right.
kind of where it started. And that your response to that was, well, number one, it's not true.
Correct,
Number two, and number two, where is that coming from?
correct. Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so your initial, the incident that led to this memo started with Coronado bringing this to your attention, correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, you also explained that you had heard the same thing, the same sort of thing from David Cavazos.
yes, sir.
Okay. And remind me now, is that something that you had heard from David Cavazos before Javier Coronado brought this to your attention, or was that something that happened later?
No, before,
Before?
yes,
And so that you had heard that kind of comment by, I believe Cavazos is also a sergeant?
yes,
Okay. That you had heard that kind of comment from Cavazos at least one time earlier.
correct,
And I think I actually heard you say maybe twice.
Twice, yes.
Earlier.
yes,
Okay, so when you say in this memo at page 22 that on 3/17/2014, it was brought to my attention by Sergeant Trevino and that Lieutenant Zellers had been inquiring into my sick leave, that's also going on at about that same time, right?
yes,
So the discussion about Zellers looking into your sick leave comes up at the same time with Coronado saying he's saying something about that you have a personal relationship with Zellers,
yes, it's connected to it.
that there's a connection there of some kind,
If,
Correct.
yeah, by the wording, the way it was
by the way it was
said.
brought to you. Now, when you, and as I recall, it was Sergeant Coronado, the reason Zellers was inquiring about Coronado was that he was claiming that you and Coronado were taking sick leave days at the same time.
Correct,
Okay, and so what he had been saying to other supervisory staff is, y'all need to monitor that because there's something potentially fishy about them being off sick together at the same time.
correct, that's what it was mentioned.
I mean, that's what he was saying, correct?
Yes, yes,
All right. And it's also my understanding that in talking to Sergeant Coronado, that you inquired of him where he was hearing this information about that you all had that you had a relationship with others.
yes,
Okay, and then he told you, I got it from Lucas Torres.
yes,
Okay. So it was my understanding that after that discussion with Coronado, that you went to your supervisor at the time which was Sergeant Elizabeth Trevino.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And so you brought this to her attention,
Yes,
right? Okay. And as part of that, and you brought it to her in an official capacity. I mean, you brought it to her saying, hey, I'm hearing this, it's bothering me, I'm upset about it. And you told her what it was, and that was the next step, appropriate next step for you to take, correct?
yes, sir.
And then she, it seems, told you, well, you're going to have to reduce this to writing.
Yeah,
Is
put
that
it in right,
correct?
put the complaint, yes.
Put the complaint,
Yes.
put a written complaint. So out of that, you get this memo of March 18 that was certainly adopted by you, but was prepared with the assistance of Sergeant Elizabeth Trevino.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, now, without getting too much into who did what, I heard you say earlier, well, I started typing it up first, but I was too upset or too angry, and then she took that over.
right.
Okay, and so did she then get on the computer and do the typing herself, and all the same time, kind of like debriefing you, if you will, or interviewing you?
More, well, basically asking me how do I feel, how this whole thing is making me feel.
Okay.
So I did tell her how I was feeling that day.
Okay, and then she was typing it all out?
For my,
Okay, so is it fair, so this is let me see, this is a 3-page memo, and it's got a lot of detail in it. And so this is what she ended up preparing for you as part of her interview of you,
right, with me being there, yes.
which you then reviewed and signed off on.
Correct,
And then it looks like as the supervisor, she did so as well, correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, some of the things in here reflect that some of the complaints involving Zellers go back as far to a time when you were not yet even a police officer.
correct.
Is that correct? And it was my understanding that you had worked at the front desk, you say CSS, what is CSS?
It's a community service specialist.
Community service, okay, so you worked there, and that in that context, you got to know Zellers as well as a number of other officers.
Sergeants, yes,
Correct, so you knew a lot of the officers even before you went to the academy.
correct.
All right, and the time period that we're talking about there is 2011.
Correct.
Okay. When did you end up going to the academy?
On May 2011,
In May of 2011?
Yes.
And were you, I think it's, 6 months course of study?
about 6 months, yes.
Okay, and when did you come out?
I believe it was October 28th, I believe, more or less.
Of 2011?
That's for the graduation, yes.
Okay, so in the context of the time you started working for the CS, that's a city job, right?
Correct,
Okay, so you were a civilian with the city,
yes.
all right. And so let's break this down. So in that time period from when you were at the front desk to the time you went to the academy, are you saying that Zellers engaged in inappropriate conduct with you?
Within that time frame, yes.
Okay, in that time frame? Okay, and that he was doing what?
Excessive text messaging. When I was at the front desk, constantly saying that I was real pretty. And like I said, once or twice, it's okay, but more
Okay.
than that time, it's kind of uncomfortable.
Okay.
Would catch him actually looking at me,
Okay.
constantly staring, which has also made me feel very uncomfortable.
Okay. Did you make any kind of complaint or report at that time about it?
No, sir.
All right. Did you, I had understood from our prior interview that you then, when you applied to the academy, that a number of officers offered to help you or to assist you with that process, Zellers being one of them. Is that correct?
Number of officers, I don't recall saying that, but
Okay.
as far as Zellers, yes.
Okay, did any existing law enforcement officers offer to assist you with that process, to help you with the application process or the studying or anything in the academy?
No, not to, for help me for that, no.
Okay,
Nothing.
so you did that on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
It
Was
wasn't my
Zellers
first
involved
time.
in that? Was Zellers involved in that?
As far as helping me out, yes.
He was?
Yes.
Okay, and how so?
He provided, he loaned me a penal code book. I don't know if it was his or somebody else's.
Okay,
He wanted to help me out along with other officers to prepare ourselves physically for the physical assessment.
okay,
officer, you
so
know.
you're saying, okay,
I'm sorry,
maybe I
not
had,
officers, another civilians, I'm sorry.
okay,
that
and
were
maybe I had misunderstood the way you
Yeah,
put
sorry
it. So
about
you're
that.
saying he wanted to help you out along with other officers?
Other civilians, they're working in the jail section or communications,
Okay,
that were also applying for the police academy.
correct. Other city employees that
Yes.
were applying for the academy?
That's
And
correct.
so he was there making himself available, or saying, I can help you this, I'll provide you a penal code, I'll do this, I'll do that, whatever.
Right.
And he did that for you, correct?
Yes,
And he did that for other people interested in the academy?
correct.
Okay. Let me break this down. So in that time period, did you feel that Zellers was doing anything improper or inappropriate?
Besides of what I mentioned of staring and using, calling me pretty all the time, the sending of text messages, it was way beyond of what a male friend would do. I
Okay.
have male friends, and they don't text me all the time, and
Okay.
they don't text for like almost all day.
Once you were in their academy, did you get any kind of sexual harassment training in that academy?
I believe so. I believe I got it before I went to the police academy as a CSS.
So before you went to the academy, but while you were in the city, you got sexual harassment training?
Correct.
Okay. And as part of that training, did they indicate that if an employee like yourself felt that you were, that there was improper attention or comments to you, that you needed to report that?
Right, that's what the video says.
Okay. So you had gotten that training even before you went to the academy?
Right, yes.
Okay. And then you had also gotten that training again in the academy?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't recall, but yes, it might
Okay.
be.
And so while you were in the academy, did you report any harassment type misconduct by Zellers? to
While in the
anybody?
academy? No.
While in the academy,
Oh, no.
okay. And you came out of the academy in 2011, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and did you become was there an opening for a police officer position?
No, once
start-
you get selected to the academy, you basically go through the whole training as well as the field training. You pass everything, then of course you
Okay.
stay there.
Okay, so now you're police officer.
After training, yes, field training.
And I think you've got a probationary period, that you're a probationary officer for a while?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you completed all of that successfully?
Correct.
All right, and now you've been with the city since 2011
Yes, sir.
as a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you came out of the academy, and were you assigned to a patrol shift?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you work with an FTO, a field training officer, or somebody like that?
Yes, sir, a few of them.
Okay. Did you have continuing contact with Zellers?
No,
No?
no, not at all.
Do you have any complaints about Zellers in those, initial months when you were now a patrol officer?
Not when I was already on patrol, no.
Okay. So is it fair to say that the next time that you hear something about Zellers that doesn't sit right with you is when you're saying Cavazos brings something to your attention?
As far as after patrol, or like when I got on patrol?
Yeah.
No, that would be the second time.
I'm sorry?
That would be the second time.
That would be
Sergeant Cavazos brought it to my
next
attention.
time that you hear something about Zellers?
Yes.
Okay, and so can you give us an idea of when that happened?
That was, I don't know the exact date, but I do know it was right after I was on my own. Like, I got cleared to go on my own.
Uh-huh,
I'm going to say maybe about late February of 2012.
2012?
More or less,
Okay.
yes.
So we're kind of, so you're thinking about February 2012, Cavazos brings something to your attention about Zellers and his comments towards you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you indicated earlier that you had a similar comment from Cavazos a second time.
Correct.
Okay, and when more or less was that? And I'm not, you don't need to give me a specific
Well,
date.
the first time, if you don't mind me going, so that way you can see first and second. The first time was when I was at the front desk. Lieutenant Zellers came to the front desk, not to sit there, because Sergeant Cavazos was doing his 2-hour shift there, his 2-hour rotations. So Lieutenant Zellers came to the front, of course, he started talking and
Is
chit-chatting.
this when you're a patrol officer?
No,
already?
a CSS.
Oh, CSS, okay,
yeah.
yeah, we covered that. Okay.
Right, so that's the first time. The second time was when I was already on patrol,
Okay,
outside the building of the parking lot, there, the PD. Sergeant Cavazos brought it to my attention that,
Sergeant Cavazos brought something to your attention about Zellers.
yes,
And that's the February incident,
more or less on or about, yes.
more or less,
yes.
okay. Is there a third one?
Not from him, no.
Not
Not
from-
from that point on, sir, I did not hear a thing until
Okay.
that date.
Okay, so is it fair to say that from about February 2012, when you had the last communication from Cavazos, until Sergeant Coronado came home and said, hey, I heard this about your relationship with Zellers, there's nothing to report?
Exactly,
Okay. So through the rest of 2012 and through the rest of 2013 until March of 2014?
correct,
Okay, and then it comes up again,
correct.
all right? And in this memo, you indicate that, and so when you heard that from Sergeant Coronado, that's when you went to Trevino?
Yes, sir,
Okay. And Trevino, it looks like, had also told you that Lieutenant Zellers was making inquiries about the sick leave abuse,
yes,
sick leave utilization. I'm not going to say abuse, but sick leave utilization,
correct,
correct? And in your memo, you say that she advised you that Zellers was claiming that your sick leaves coincided with Coronado's.
yes, sir,
Okay, presumably because of y'all's relationship.
correct.
Okay, now, as a, and I think I asked you what your understanding of this was. As a lieutenant, would Zellers or any other lieutenant have the authority to inquire about sick leave utilization of people under them in the chain of command?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, so the fact that Zellers is asking about sick leave or bringing sick leave issues to the attention of other sergeants, I mean, you recognize that that's something he gets to do?
After meeting with Captain Alcocer, yes, that's when I realized that
Okay,
he did have every
Before that,
authority to.
you didn't realize that?
Before I had, no, honestly, I did not. I thought, if he's your lieutenant, then he has every right, but Lieutenant Garcia was my lieutenant, so I thought it would be under his,
Okay, so
authority.
your understanding was, well, Lieutenant Garcia is my lieutenant, so he's the only one that gets to ask
Yes,
those
yeah,
questions?
but it was my mistake, I admitted
Okay.
to it. Yeah.
But okay, and I want to make sure, are you comfortable with the notion that the lieutenants get to inquire about sick leave utilization?
That's their position, they have every right,
Okay.
so that's what I
So,
understand.
so that part of it, you're actually, you understand and you're okay with, you understand that, right?
Part of it, yes,
Part of it,
Yes.
okay. Now, to the extent that it's tied to these other things that you're saying about Zellers, that part you're not okay with,
oh, of course not.
okay. Now, when you met with, so this memo, which Sergeant Trevino helped you put together, that got routed up to the captain, correct?
Yes,
All right, and then there was a meeting with the captain after that, correct?
correct,
And he had more follow-up questions about this memo for you, correct?
yes, sir.
Okay, during the course of that meeting with him, would you have told him that that Sergeant Trevino assisted you with the memo?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Did you at any point basically say, well, she's the one that wrote it, these aren't my words, or words to that effect?
Certain words were not mine, but because it didn't come to my mind at that moment, which she had assisted me with it.
Okay,
To, help me word it correctly
okay,
and not mumble jumble because
Okay.
of my anger, the way I was felt.
okay. And I think you indicated earlier that you yourself were kind of wound up about it and you were having trouble authoring this
Yes, when I
document.
said that is the beginning of it, not, I don't mean the whole entire thing and then it was just like the first few words and,
Okay. At some point in that meeting, did the captain then say, well, can you go back and do a memo, an IDC, that is completely in your own words? Did he ask you to do that?
it was more told.
I'm sorry?
Told. I need for you to, basically saying, you need to redo this in your
Okay.
own words.
Okay, well, let me see what word, would you say you were ordered to do that, or that you were, it was suggested to
He did
you that
not-
you do that, or?
Well, he didn't use the word, I'm ordering you to, no, it was, and I don't remember the exact words to it, but it wasn't asked if I would like to. It wasn't asked like that.
Okay.
It was basically saying, you need to word it.
You need to do an IDC that's
With your own
fully in your
words.
own words.
Right,
Okay, which you did,
which I did.
all right. And would that be the one, if you flip over to the next page at 025, is that what that document is?
Yes,
Okay. And so the document, the IDC that's at page 25, and that looks like is a, no, that document is a 3-page document,
yes,
right? By you,
yes,
okay. And in that one, you kind of recount the things that I'm going over with you now,
Correct.
right? All right. And it looks to me like in the second paragraph, you're basically clarifying, saying, I'm not complaining about Zellers looking into my sick leave. I'm complaining about finding out that he's saying to people that I'm in this, that we had this relationship.
yes, that's correct.
In that you had dumped him, or that's in quotes here.
Correct.
Okay. So after you submitted this memo, were you involved at all in any of the follow-up investigations that were done?
Besides the interview with Hernandez and the affidavit, no.
Okay.
I was.
Did you had an interview with Hernandez at one point, right?
Correct.
Okay, and and then you were later did the affidavit that is at page 28.
Yes.
Okay, so, and in this one, it's my understanding that this affidavit was written or authored in a manner similar to the one that, the very first one that you did with Trevino.
Similar, of course, of course, I don't
Well,
have
similar
the
in
first
the-
one, but yes.
Similar in the sense that you're talking to Hernandez and telling him, you know, what happened or what's going, and he's writing it down, and just the way, kind of what happened with Trevino, you're both working on this document together, and at some point, he prints it out and has you look at it, and then you review it to see whether you agree with it or not.
The second affidavit, yes.
The affidavit, the one that says affidavit.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There was two. One that he already had it printed out
Uh-huh.
and written
Yeah,
on his own words.
yeah.
And then this is the second one.
And then, so did you look at the one that you're saying he had ready?
Yes,
Okay, and there were things in there that you didn't agree with?
correct.
Okay, and you brought those to his attention?
That's correct.
Okay, and then he got back on the computer and you guys went through it again?
Yes,
Okay, and then he printed this one out again?
yes.
And you got to review it?
Yes, for me to sign it, yes.
Yes, and then once you reviewed it the second time, were you comfortable with it?
Yeah, at the time, yes, I was.
Okay, and this is an affidavit under oath, correct?
Yes,
And as a law enforcement officer, you understand the importance of the oath, correct?
yes,
Okay, so is your statement here in this affidavit true and correct?
incorrect?
True and correct?
It's correct the way, because I was there to tell him what words to be
Uh-huh.
changed, and it was done, and I signed it.
And you're okay with it?
Yes, at this,
Okay.
yeah.
And you're not here to disavow this affidavit today, are you?
No, but keep also in mind, this affidavit was done prior to me viewing the sexual harassment video.
Okay, okay. I'm hearing you say that you saw something after you did this affidavit.
Mandatory, yes. We all had to attend the
Okay.
sexual
In
harassment.
other words, you got some additional, some sexual, probably not just you, probably a lot of employees.
mandatory,
Got
every-
sexual harassment training.
Yes,
Okay, and what you're telling the hearing examiner is, I and others got additional sexual harassment training after I did this affidavit.
correct.
Okay. Well, so, as I had originally read this affidavit, I understood it to be like your statement of what the facts are and your understanding of the facts.
Correct.
And so you're not stepping away from that. The affidavit is correct.
The affidavit is correct, but I now know after, like I said, viewing the sexual harassment video,
Uh-huh.
I was correct.
Okay.
The sexual harassment video that I saw about October, November, more or less,
Of what year?
was last year.
Of last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Is different from the one that I saw as a CSS.
Okay.
Updated.
Okay,
So-
so you had seen one at the CSS?
CSS.
At the CSS, you had seen one, and then you were shown another one in 2014.
Yes.
And you're saying that one was different.
Is updated, yes,
It was updated,
Yeah.
and it kind of would explain what harassment was and all that?
correct.
Okay, and so, well, let me see if I can, I'm just trying to understand. So are you saying that after seeing that video, you changed your mind about whether what had happened with Zellers was or wasn't harassment?
The definition to it of his actions is what changed my mind.
It changed your mind?
The actions that he took that time and the information that was provided on that video, which you do have to take a test,
Okay. Well, you got to
Made me-
take a little
yes.
quiz on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
made me say to myself, I was correct then.
Okay.
That is true. That is the definition of sexual harassment.
Okay, so looking at the video in 2014 and then comparing that against what had happened with Zellers before, you felt like, oh yeah, that was harassment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so the conduct by Zellers that you're saying that it happened before is the conduct that happened in 2011, in
Yes,
2012.
correct.
Okay,
2011,
2011.
yes.
Okay,
2012 was when it was brought to my attention from Sergeant Cavazos.
yeah, because in 2012, you didn't have anything direct from Zellers. It
No,
was brought
sir.
to your attention.
Correct.
So the only things that you know about as far as Zellers saying or doing things or whatever are things that you can testify to, you know, on your face-to-face that happened in 2011.
Correct.
Okay. And so did you, well, after looking at that video, did you feel like, well, you know, my affidavit is wrong?
Well, not that it was wrong, because at the time, I did believe that it wasn't sexual harassment. It did not meet the elements of sexual harassment.
Based on the old training?
Based on the old training, based on what everybody else was, not everybody else, but what I was told by Detective Hernandez.
Okay.
put everything together, and I say, okay, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm overlooking things.
Okay.
But,
But then when you saw the new video, it appeared to you to set a different scale of what harassment was.
yes, sir.
Okay, and so using that applied to the Zeller's behavior in 2011, you said, oh, no, that is harassment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now,
You know, I hate to bother you, but we're almost at quitting time.
I understand. I'm,
Well, it's
What-
okay,
what-
we've got other witnesses anyway, so we're
I'm-
going to pass quitting time,
Yeah.
and
when do you need to leave, sir? Because we need to talk about, if we're going to have to schedule another day, we're going to have to talk about
4
that.
o'clock, I'm leaving.
4 o'clock, okay.
And I don't feel bad about it. We went through lunch, and we went through everything else.
Yeah. No. Well, I guess even if I finish with her and pass her, council's going to have more follow-up questions, so I
Yeah.
just kind of.
At least I'll tell you, as it stands right now, I won't have, but it depends if the last couple of questions you got.
You don't have?
At this point, I don't have any
Okay.
redirect, but
Okay.
depending on what your last.
Okay, well, let
salvo
me
was.
ask a few more questions, and then maybe we can finish with her at least,
That
and
would
we
be
don't have to
fine.
call her
That
back.
would-
Okay,
but-
and
Okay, you've got 3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes. So let me ask you this. So, you didn't see the IDC by Sergeant Coronado or any of the other officers that were generated in this case, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, and so you don't have any personal knowledge of anything, any other material that was generated
That was,
here?
no, shown to me, no.
Okay, and nor did you see the statement by David Cavazos?
No.
Until today?
Until today, yes.
When council asked you questions about it, the one that's at page 38, you had never seen that before?
Correct.
Okay, and your reaction to that one is, well, he's not being honest there?
That's correct.
Okay, because you're saying, no, he did tell me these things?
Yes, sir.
But are we clear, officer, that the things he told you, they happened back in 2012?
Yes. The second one, yes.
Yeah, the second
Yeah.
one, and then with Zellers, that happened back in 2011.
Yes.
Okay. I'll end it on that note, and if we're not going
I
to
don't
go
have any
further,
questions left
then
on this
she can
witness.
be
I don't have any
released.
questions left for this witness, and she can be excused.
Okay, so, all right, thanks very much. I
Thank you,
know
sir.
it's not
Thank you,
easy.
officer. You're released.
Okay, we might as well look at some dates then, I guess, at this point. What,
Yeah, do you have your calendar handy, or?
yeah, well,
Excuse me, do you want this on the record, this discussion?
Let us talk about what we're going to do, and then we'll get on the record what we decide.
I'm trying to remember, but I think next week is open for me, so I can get back in the airplane and come back.
I need to look at my calendar real quick. May I ask, how many more witnesses we can expect?
Sure.
I need to confer that with my client. I think that may be down to, at the most, 2 or 3.
So we just need 1 day at the most.
Yeah, and I'm actually,
Probably half a day at that rate.
Well, but if you're going to come down for,
I'm gonna come down, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, I think we're talking
yeah, I
about
do
day.
not anticipate it taking anywhere near a whole day. I mean,
Okay, sir, then, well, next week, what,
I have Friday available,
Next week, or this,
Friday the 6th?
6th. The rest of the days I got work. Let's see.
I'm good.
Oh, wait, I'm okay on the 3rd and the 6th.
how about you?
You've got the 3rd and the 6th?
I got the 3rd and the 6th.
And do you have those two available?
yeah.
The sixth works best for me. Are we gonna be able to have this?
That's what, we need to
We'll
check.
check to see if
If we have-
this will be available on the 3rd or the 6th, right?
You can firm up a date, then we can.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing right now. So the sixth works for me. The third,
That's good, let's go with the 6th then. Does it work for you? Or
Yes,
not? Okay.
do we have the room on the
We'll
sixth?
let you know in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, let me have him confirm that.
Rick, I didn't make a copy of anything on this disc. I just played it just for a second. I'm gonna give it back to you.
Okay.
I would like,
You're not gonna go to bed with it?
well, I did want to listen to it though, and if you can send me a copy of it, unless you want me to copy it out, but unless, if you can, I do like to at least hear it.
Let's see, today is the 25th. I'll make copies and put them in the notebook.
Frank, they can excuse the rest of the witnesses.
Well, don't excuse them, they're still under,
Oh, I didn't mean to excuse them, I just let them go home. Yeah, not like release them out of the subpoena, but
yeah, we're not releasing them from the subpoena.
6th, also available?
You're gonna recontact the witnesses.
Yeah.
Who do you,
Sixth is
who,
good.
may I ask who you need? Maybe,
Yeah, the
we-
6th is available, this room.
Okay.
okay,
We'll
so
take
who's
it.
available, who do you need?
I don't think I
Thank
need
you.
to, I'm gonna talk it over with Lucas, and maybe I'll let you guys know. I don't, we'll see that either minute.
We'll set it up with him, let him know.
Okay. Anyway, the 6th is available, so we might as well go with that.
Let's go with the 6th.
Same starting time, 9 o'clock?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Are y'all put something on the record?
You want,
Yeah, let's get it on the record.
To say we've,
We're recessing.
yeah, we've closed the hearing, and it'll be let's see, how can we phrase that?
It's
It'll be-
recessed until Friday, March 6th at
Recessed,
9
yeah.
o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, as I said, sorry that we're running out of time, but the rate we were going, we were going to be here till 10 o'clock anyway.
one piece of information that brought my attention. I don't know who you've got on in mind, but that Friday we have a lieutenant's exam, and I don't know if these sergeants are.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt their exam. The only one who'd be important would be Lucas.
Well, who do you have? Who are you going to call?
I need to confer it with him.
I don't know if he's gonna take the exam.
I'm halfway thinking of just going on with Lucas.
Lucas on the lieutenant's exam?
Let me call him.
I'm sure he's still here.
Yeah, I think he is.
What's that, Rosie?